It's just another beautiful day playing my favorite tactical shooter, and oh look, 4 duelists have been picked. Guess I'm playing smokes again. Every role-based game has that role nobody wants to play because it's seen as less fun. But is smoke/controller actually the worst role in Valorant, or do most people just really suck at it? Smokes is seen by most players as a purely supportive role, which makes finding a smoke player in ranked solo queue about as rare as finding a Reyna player with normal social skills.
Honestly, you're just a little PogChamp.
What are you talking to?
But today, I'm going to show you that the problem is not that smokes are less fun to play, the problem is that you suck at playing them and don't understand the role. Let's start with the basics. Poor smoke placement absolutely plagues low-ranked Valorant and is so easy to fix. There are 2 main types of smokes currently in the game, walls and orbs. Wall smokes block long lines of sight and generally speaking should be used to cut off multiple angles at once or force the other team to cross them multiple times to actually clear and enter an area. Orb smokes are the more common shape, but also a bit trickier to use. One of the most common mistakes you'll see from inexperienced smoke players is haphazardly placed orb smokes like this. The problem with this smoke is that an enemy player could walk into the smoke and then come out of it at a variety of different spots, which makes it much harder to hold with your crosshair. If you place a smoke like this instead, you'll still block off the line of sight, but you'll also force enemy players into a much more predictable exit from the smoke. This is also a great time to talk about getting aggressive with smokes. There seems to be a big misconception that smokes are a primarily defensive ability, but good smoke players know how to abuse the placement of smokes and the shape of them for all sorts of crazy aggressive plays. The same way that a smoke can be placed incorrectly to allow enemies to walk out of it at odd angles, a smoke can also be placed correctly to allow you to walk out of it at unpredictable spots, and even used to create new and creative angles to peek from. So I wanted to highlight this round after we talked about aggressive smoke plays because we're going to see some cool stuff happening. There's a defensively placed smoke there from the Brimstone on defense trying to lock down showers, but OpTic is going to ignore it and push forward as they try to distract the LOUD players from watching lamps. This allows FNS to run in and he drops the Viper's ultimate, which I would classify as a smoke, a very, very strong one at that. And you can see that combined with the Brimstone smokes, it becomes very difficult for LOUD to play this round because they just don't have any lines of sight to anything despite having better weapons. And the Viper smoke makes it very difficult for them to retake U-Haul, and they're actually afraid to play against these weaker weapons. The Viper's Pit also creates lots of different crazy angles that OpTic can flash out of and push from, and it just becomes an almost impossible round for LOUD to win because of the smoke placement and the way that OpTic has used it to carve up the map and create all sorts of new sight lines. This aggressive use of a smoke shows perfectly how they can be used to essentially change the map to benefit you. A big gap between 2 pieces of cover can quickly become a much different shape on the map by just plopping a smoke in the middle of it. Now it's a giant wall. This is a concept that you will see the best smokers use constantly when anchoring a site against oncoming enemy attackers. Normally there are only so many places that you can hide on a site, but with smokes you can create entirely new shapes and spaces to play behind. Just look at how many new angles there are to worry about when you connect generator to dice with a smoke right here. Most of the examples so far have been plays that you can make as an individual to get more value as a smoker, but it would also be irresponsible for me not to talk a little bit about team play. After all, Valorant is a team-based game. Smokes are pretty much the most important piece of utility that a team has access to on both attack and defense, and it's one of the reasons why it's really important to stay alive a lot of the time as a smoker, at least until you have placed your smokes. This is because it can drastically alter the way the map plays to benefit you if you use your smokes correctly. On attack, smokes should be saved until the team is ready to push, or if you need to take a really important piece of map control like halls on breeze or mid on ascent. Once your team is grouped up and ready to go, it's extremely important to get smokes in place early before anyone rushes in. And I cannot stress this enough as somebody who plays a lot of solo queue, you need to smoke early because your timing is going to be awful most of the time in a ranked game. And this means that a single operator shot could stop the entire play and cause your frightened allies to revert to their lizard brain programming and start baiting each other until everybody is dead. On defense, smokes fulfill a couple of different purposes for the team team, and it can be very challenging to use them correctly. Sometimes it's best to immediately stall an attacking push with a one-way or to just smoke off a choke point on certain parts of the map, and this is usually the right play when you're on the weaker site, meaning the site with less players. Other times it's better to save your smokes for a more powerful retake attempt. Generally speaking, this will be when you're on the stronger site to start and have to go retake the weaker one. With good smoke usage and by aggressively playing around them, meaning that you push into your smoke sometimes and even push out of them to take the fight, you can actually make the other team very afraid to challenge your smokes, and this allows you to later on just kind of lock down parts of the map by just playing a smoke and then rotating away, because people will be too afraid to actually push them. This round is kind of the perfect example of how you want to play smokes on the defensive side. We're going to be watching Mako here as FPX pushes his site on A, and you can see that there are not very many players for DRX here on the A site, so it's really all on the smoke player as the hit comes in. We see the Raze blast packing in with an ultimate, and watch Mako's positioning as he slips into his Viper orb just in time to avoid being detected. So even though FPX has pushed in, they haven't actually cleared the site. Even though they killed the Sage there, they still haven't cleared the site because the Viper is hiding in a very disastrous position for FPX. So as the spike comes in to be planted, there's going to be resistance that has not been accounted for. And Mako plays aggressively around his smokes, finds a second kill by pushing out of it right as it drops, and this catches FPX completely off guard. And you might say, well, the smoke player is dead. It's only 2 kills. That's not that big of a deal. But you can see on the minimap that it has bought enough time for DRX to start rotating in, and it's also kind of made FPX scared. They're having to blow a bunch of extra utility. They still have not planted the spike, and they're not in good positions, which allows DRX to sweep in and clean up the round. Probably the coolest thing about smokes is how varied the playstyle is for the role. Sometimes you drop your smokes and charge in as an entry fragging Brimstone with no more utility to spend. Other times you're basically a better version of Cypher or Killjoy when you lock down a site with your Viper wall, mollies, and orb. Sometimes you're the big brain lurk player, sneaking behind enemy lines to set up rotations for your team or clutch around with the perfect flank. Speaking of lurking, if you'd like to learn more about this playstyle, be sure to watch the video on screen right now.